Welcome to Intuitive Relationships, where the things we talk about create the knowledge and awareness which will ultimately cause the real you to shine. I'm Kristen Lamb, and I'm here with Ruth Wakefield, my sister, who I love and adore.
Hello.
Hi. We're going to take you on a fun journey today. A little bit about us and why we're here, what makes us, I think, unique, but also at the same time not unique, because we're just like everybody else, except maybe the fact that we are from a family of 13. I was third of 11 kids.
And I was 8 of 11 kids, the youngest girl.
Right.
Which was probably a little more spoiled than the others.
True, I will attest to that. You were definitely spoiled by all the brothers that surrounded you, and of course the sisters who just loved and adored you.
Yes.
So with that, we want to talk about kind of what makes us different in that, being each of us one of 11 kids, we're surrounded in a whole bunch of stuff all the time. The house was crazy, never a dull moment, by any means. We never lacked someone to play with. And not only that, but we traveled an international life. And, being one of the older kids, I got the opportunity to experience and remember moving to the Middle East when I was 6 years old. Lived there for 3 years. I lived half the time on the Palestinian side, half the time on the Jewish side. So I got to experience both cultures. Most of all, I got to experience how to throw rocks at each other. I didn't get to play with Barbies or Tonka trucks. I got to play with the kids and how they played. It just was what you do. And, part of that, I did get to experience meeting a police officer after throwing rocks at cars and get hauled home and reminded why we don't throw rocks at cars, even though the kids do. I don't know how much of that you remember, Ruth. You were young. You were born.
I was born there. I don't remember anything about Israel.
Right. But the fun is my parents got a great experience growing up internationally and seeing cultures. The differences between the cultures, but also, and more importantly, the similarities in behaviors and reactions that occur depending on the communication styles that happen, the different kinds of things you need to apply. And ironically, coming home from Israel with 9 kids in the family, and then they added 2 more 7 years later, so there was a bit of a gap. All those cultural experiences and raising the 11 kids drove them to being therapists, which was really important because, you don't know what you don't know. And, mom was raised with a very controlling mom. Dad was raised on the wrong side of the tracks. So you take the two combinations, they moved to have an experience away from the families so they could be their own family, create their own culture, try and disconnect a little bit from the things that didn't work so well in their life growing up, and to implement the things that did. Ruth, some of the things you remember as a kid, I remember babysitting you. You wouldn't remember that. I was the best babysitter.
The best sister babysitter. Yes, I'll give you that.
The sisters will fight us for it later.
Yes, they will. And we'll never tell them who the favorite is.
Being one of the older ones, I got to tend a lot. Ruth, if your life is terrible, you can blame it on me. The other mom, I didn't let you sleep. I like to hold you and cuddle you like the rest of the kids. I think I would wake them up sometimes just to have the opportunity to play a little longer. But I had a very be responsible role growing up. I had to watch the kids. I had to help cook. I had to help do laundry. Did you even remember? Did you have to do any of that?
I actually did have to do that stuff. I do remember that, contrary to your belief that I probably didn't, because you think I'm the spoiledest, but I really wasn't. I'll just say I was. Anyway, I would have to say I remember babysitting my 2 youngest brothers a lot. They were my babies because I loved babies. I still love babies. So I ended up watching my 2 littlest brothers a lot. I remember holding them all the time, probably just as you held me all the time. But to remember a lot about my childhood, I don't know that I remember a lot. I remember I was with my friends a lot. I spent a lot of time with my friends. And to be honest with you, I was so ADD. I think I was just trying to catch up and just roll with whatever just was handed to me. And I didn't think a lot about what I was doing, why I was doing it, and where I was going with what I was doing. Right. I think I just learned to survive what I had, which wasn't good, bad, or ugly. I just was trying to get through my life the best way I could, not even recognizing I was ADD.
Well, and being one of the older kids, I think mom and dad were very vigilant with the older ones, with rules and organization. And by the time the younger ones came around, the big complaint that we had as older siblings was, why do the younger kids have it so slack? You guys seem to get away with everything. You know, the rules of when to come home at night, what time, curfews, who you hang out with, really what you wear. I mean, I'm telling you, you wore stuff I never got away with. In fact, I remember one day Dad telling me to go in the house and change my pants. They were pink pants and they were pretty thin. And he was upset because, you know, you could see my panty line between it and, you know, showing through. And so I put it in my backpack. I went and took them off, put it in my backpack, went to school and changed. But I watched you walk out the door with short shorts and all sorts of stuff thinking, why is Dad not having issue with this?
Maybe he was just getting too old and he was tired of raising 11 kids.
Right. And he was going blind. He lost his eyesight, which it didn't occur to me as a young, attempting the adulting side of life, that those would be subtle things that he would miss, just not being able to see. In fact, when I came back from my year overseas on my own, going to college, I came back and I remember Dad didn't even know who we were when we walked in the room until he heard our voice because he couldn't see. You know, of course, surgeries caught up and helped restore that sight to him. But I think a lot of the parenting stuff that he could see and innately knew to help guide maybe a little bit more was gone.
Right. And I would probably say, even with my own children that I am dealing with and that not dealing with, but with my own children, I recognize the older ones. With my oldest, I remember making sure I taught him all the good things, all the principles he would need to know, how to survive, all the great things he would need to know in life. And as I got down to my younger ones, I thought I already taught it because I focused so much on teaching it to my oldest that I realized I missed it with my youngest. And now I'm trying to play catch up.
Right. Sex education.
Yes.
You know, how many of us got up the courage to actually have that conversation, got through the first or the second, and then just completely forgot. You know, I have 5 kids, love them. They're starting their adulting phase of life. And it's fun to see them marry and start into these relationships as young couples dating and then moving into marriage, and also the challenges that they have. I mean, think about, you know, when you got married, Ruth, the struggles that you and Craig had coming together with different communication patterns.
Yes. I had already had a child. He had come out of a divorce, and there were lots of different communication styles and patterns that we had to learn what each other really meant when something was being said. And I think that, understanding part of the intuitive relationships has helped us to navigate the waters that we have had to navigate through our relationship.
Right. Same here. In fact, when Rob and I got married, we were actually married for 21 years, and then he passed away in a plane crash. But even the last photo that we had together, the photographer, when she was taking the picture, she says, "Oh my gosh, I wish all my clients were like this. You are still newlyweds. You have that spark, you have that passion." In fact, the images on the cover of what we talk about, we may change that over the time. So if you don't see it there, don't feel bad. But it's part of that connection that you want. And Rob was raised on a farm, which I love because they have an incredible work standard and ethic. It's ingrained in them. I mean, you're feeding the cows, milkings, changing water for the crops. You learned a lot of sleepless nights, which was great when we started having kids because he got up and he certainly walked his fair share of holes in the carpet when the babies would cry at night. But his communication pattern was different than mine. I mean, you and I mean, we were daughters of therapists. It was about how do we learn and discover why we do what we do. And, you know, traditionally in the therapy world, a lot of it was, here, let me tell you what your problem is. And the therapist was dictating what that should be. And then over time, they've learned that no, somebody really can't tell you what's wrong with you without understanding the core operating system within us that drives us. What is it that causes us to react the way we do? And the response patterns. Their way of communicating was perfect for them in their home. Ours was great for us in our home, but you combine two completely different communication patterns and you're bound to have issues. And so for us, the greatest foundation we had was we got together and we took a communication class together. And that gave us common terminology, a common framework of understanding, so that when there were issues, not if, but when, we could actually resolve it with something that we both came together on. You and Craig? What was that like for you?
Well, we struggled. I'm sure just like anybody else. Craig and I didn't take a class together. In fact, I think the fact that I had parents as therapists and that I thought taught me pretty good how to communicate as I was older and my ADD brain wasn't just trying to play catch up, and I've learned how to work with my ADD brain. I think it kind of gave Craig a little bit of a pushback, like, wait a minute. What are you saying? Is this really true? Is this really accurate? And I had to just kind of put on a pause button and just let my husband figure out for himself what he wanted. And we had to figure out together how we were going to do it together. There were bumps along the road. But I have to tell you now, the man I have today is incredible because of our relationship style and what we are trying to implement from intuitive relationships.
Right, which is so fun. So let's talk about what you're going to experience as you go forward in this. We wanted to understand a little bit about us. If you look at our family, there's a whole bunch of stuff that's intermingled. Ruth, you're great at this. You know it.
We have death in our family. You experienced your husband that has passed away. We've had divorce in our family. We have had abuse. We've had addiction. We've had anxiety, PTSD, trauma, depression. We've even had medical challenge with a brother that ended up losing both of his legs due to diabetes. And now he is on dialysis for the rest of his life. And he's only 40?
Yeah, maybe. I think he might just have turned 40.
Might have just turned 40.
Yeah, that was a couple of years ago. So late 30s to lose both legs. That's some serious trauma.
So I think that we have just as much of life happening in our life, whether we come from a family with a background of therapy or therapist or not, we all go through the same situations that I think everybody in this world is experiencing and is having struggles with. And so we have found ways to help us to face these struggles in a way that doesn't have to hurt as bad.
So some of those, if we start out.
I think that some of them that we will talk about today are going to be understanding how our mind works. We have been giving this tool, this mind that is brilliant. And if we can understand how it really truly works and how it affects us, will help us every day in all of our relationships. Also, our beliefs that govern our behavior, whether our beliefs that we have are true, false, known, or unknown.
Add to that, we've got different communication styles. How to identify what yours is versus someone else, and without changing someone else, still be able to interface with them in a valuing way and a growing way.
How to stay safe in an environment or a relationship or a work environment that is not, you never feel safe in, but there's tools to help you to feel safe so you don't lose you.
Right. And with all those environments, whether in marriage, at school, your bosses, you have intense emotions that when those intense emotions come down on you, we react. Sometimes we freeze. Sometimes we run,
Sometimes we fawn.
Right? Whatever it is. But we don't want to shut down in the face of that kind of communication. We want to be able to maintain who we are. And that's what we'll talk about, as well as the causes of conflict.
Yeah, stewardship. Stewardship is probably the number one reason why there are so many conflicts. If we can understand stewardship and the things that go with that, that will help alleviate so many different relationships.
It's going to eliminate the relationship problems.
Yes.
Because when someone starts exercising a stewardship that's not theirs, if my neighbor came in and started telling me how to freaking decorate my house and that, oh my gosh, those drapes are ugly, or, whatever it is, they start trying to dictate, oh, don't wear that. That looks terrible on you. I mean, there's some people who can say that to you, but for the most part, no. When it's out of stewardship and they become overbearing, that has serious negative effects. And so we'll talk about that. We'll talk about trauma. I mean, trauma is huge. From the time we're born, we go through things in our lives as we're just learning how to walk and communicate, as we're learning how to understand the parents and when we're in trouble and when we're not, and then into the teen years where we're trying to figure ourselves out and become adults. And then ultimately different losses or losses of dreams will go into and what our dream would be, and then how to reclaim the things once we have lost something, how to bring it back in a healthy, positive way.
I think also listening to the voices in our head. There's so many voices that go on in our head. And if we could recognize when they're good and when they're not, and how to deal with them and get them out.
Add to that, we're going to talk about things that help you build yourself and others. Integrity, how to affirm somebody's worth that will create growth, how to give them agency, and ultimately how to get back to trusting your instincts. Because going through communication challenges growing up, and you know what? If you think about this, the number one thing that we do in life is communicate. Everywhere we go, even if we're not saying something, we're communicating with the emotions, with the glances, with the lack of glances. But there's no school for that. You think about, you have math, you have history, you have geography. Well, how often are you going to be in all the geographical areas that you study about? Or how many of the math equations are you actually going to use in your profession? Yet every day of our lives, we communicate, and we have no class to teach us how to do that effectively. It's important.
Right. That is the number one thing that we do every day is communicate. And why is that not a bigger topic of conversation that should just be a requirement to help everybody understand how important it is, how everybody communicates, so you don't have to take life personally anymore.
Right. And with that, as you learn to trust your instincts, you can go forward and create that communication pattern that works for you, that also works for others, and how to teach it to your kids. And you're not even having to teach it, but just live it. And people see the difference in you, and they're drawn to you because of it. And that's so, so important. So, we think about the life and the stresses and the trauma and everything that we go through and the emotions that come. And I think we live in a world where we're taught to be afraid of those. Don't cry. It's okay. Don't be stressed. Go exercise. Get over the stress. Well, you know what?
That's bad.
Yeah, it's bad.
Anger is bad. Crying is bad. You are terrible. Quit being a baby. Man up.
Right. But the sad thing is, what they're telling us not to do is really what we need to be doing, because it's communicating to us. The coolest thing, when we get sick, our body tells us. We get a fever, and with that fever, we know we need aspirin, or if we're vomiting and throwing up, we know we need to go to the doctors and figure it out. That is our body's physical way of communicating with us. You take all the emotions that we have, and we're going to talk about this more as we go forward, but you take the emotions, the tears, the pain, the thoughts that come, those feelings are the things that communicate to us that there's something we need to learn, something we need to pay attention to, something that we need to focus on. And if we ignore it, we're just waiting for it to boil up. So we're going to talk about how to look at that in a self-wholesome way, and then learn and grow. And we reach amazing and great places with ourselves and with others.
It's going to be awesome. We hope you guys will enjoy the series that we have for you. I'm excited to do it with my sister. She is awesome, and she's been someone also that has taught me so many amazing things, and how to love unconditionally and just to be an amazing person. And I, every day, aspire to be more and more like her.
Oh, and I love you. And you are my baby doll. I love it when you come play with me. And we're excited to have you part of our lives. We're excited to have you join us as we take you through a journey to your intuitive relationship, which will ultimately cause the real you to shine.